Welcome to the Prepper Almanac, your ultimate guide to survival and preparedness. We appreciate you joining us today. In this video, we're going to delve deep into history, unearthing valuable survival lessons from a time of immense hardship, the Great Depression. As preppers, our goal is to learn from the past and apply these lessons to potential future scenarios. So let's discuss Great Depression tips for preppers to learn before the societal collapse. And if you end up finding value in today's video, we'd appreciate it if you could smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. We encourage you to watch the video to the end, to give us feedback and share your thoughts in the comment section below. Let's foster a community of preparedness and resilience. Now let's travel back to the late 1920s to the onset of the Great Depression. During the harshness of the Great Depression, lessons of resourcefulness and resilience emerged as defining characteristics of the human spirit. A prosperous America was plunged into an era of profound economic despair, leaving millions of its people without work. In 1929, the brutal economic downturn began, seeing 3 million individuals without employment. By 1932, unemployment had skyrocketed, leaving an astounding 12.5 million Americans struggling to find work. More than a quarter of all families found themselves without a source of income, illustrating the harsh reality of the crisis. Yet, it was in this dire scenario that societies found the power to improvise and find alternative solutions, standing as the only option against sheer desperation. These lessons from the Great Depression echo today, reminding us that when faced with societal collapse, our ability to be resourceful and resilient is the key to survival and our prepping reasons. As the Great Depression persisted, families had to be resourceful to survive not only the economic uncertainties, but also the physical challenges of the seasons. In winters, staying warm was a matter of survival, but with money tight, conventional heating fuels like coal were often out of reach. The nation had to think differently, looking at anything that burned as a potential source of heat. Many homes relied on wood-burning stoves, but those without had to improvise. Furnaces fueled by gas or oil were rare and unique, so the everyday challenge was finding what to burn to get through another day. Ingenious solutions emerged from this desperate need. Rolled newspapers, magazines, cardboard, and other stray paper products were transformed into makeshift logs for a fireplace or wood stove. To make them burn longer, some were soaked in paraffin or lard, held together with wire, or pulped and formed into logs to dry in the sun. As well as finding ways to heat their homes, families had to learn to retain heat. Bed sharing was a common sleeping arrangement, with the combined body heat helping everyone stay warm through cold winter nights. Improvised heaters were created using candles, oil lamps, and anything else that could safely burn, often placed under clay pots or metal cans to provide a little more heat in freezing rooms. Clothing strategies also evolved. Blankets, sweaters, and hats were worn around the house all day and night to fight off the chill. It was not uncommon for some families to sleep in their clothes and even their coats and hats to keep warm. The Great Depression forced many to find innovative ways to survive, and these methods show the lengths to which people went to ensure their families stayed warm during those long, cold winters. We can all learn from this past. As the seasons turned and winter gave way to summer, the challenges of the Great Depression took on a different form. The scorching heat of summer brought its own difficulties, and just as they had found ways to stay warm in winter, families had to devise ways to keep cool. With no air conditioning and often no electricity, people turned to age-old methods and innovative solutions to beat the heat. Wet sheets were hung over doorways, chilling the breeze that passed through via simple evaporative cooling. Electric fans were a luxury, but many resorted to handheld fans, stirring up a cooling breeze. In some cases, a damp towel was placed in front of a fan to further chill the air. Others turned to the earth itself for relief, utilizing geothermal cooling by circulating the ground's cool air into their living spaces. Hydration was crucial, and when ice was available, it was used in an icebox, the predecessor to our modern refrigerator. Shade was sought wherever it could be found, and any object that could cast a shadow was used to provide relief from the sun. On particularly hot nights, sleeping outdoors became a common practice, with hammocks strung between trees providing a cooler alternative to stuffy indoor sleeping quarters. Mosquitoes were an issue, but natural repellents, such as citronella grass, were used to keep them at bay. These methods, while simple, were often the difference between comfort and distress during the hot summer months of the Great Depression. These are lessons we can learn to be ready for a potential societal collapse. During the Great Depression, survival was the name of the game, and people found ways to adapt and adjust to the harsh realities of the era. With jobs scarce and money even scarcer, many turned to growing their own gardens, preserving food for the harsh winter months. Waste was not an option. Every piece of food was utilized, clothing and shoes were repaired instead of replaced. Shared living arrangements became commonplace as families moved in together to save on rent, and improvised housing, such as Hoovervilles, began to sprout up around the country. Heat and electricity were luxuries, with many resorting to burning scrap wood to keep warm. These were just some of the basic survival tactics that people had to resort to during the Great Depression, demonstrating their resourcefulness in the face of adversity. As the harsh realities of the Great Depression set in, securing a safe place to sleep and shelter from the weather became a primary concern. With evictions all too common, people had to improvise, often imitating the behavior of others to find some form of shelter, both short-term and eventually longer-term. Some turned to improvised tents, utilizing tarps, canvas, and any other large swatches of fabric they could salvage. These makeshift tents, while not as sturdy or warm as manufactured ones, were easily portable and provided at least some level of privacy and shelter as long as the weather was above freezing. Others took advantage of scrap materials to construct what were known as scrap shacks. Pieces of scrap wood, particularly in sheets, were assembled to create crude walls and roofs. Hardware was salvaged as much as possible, and these shacks became a common sight in Hoovervilles, often standing in long rows next to tents. Abandoned buildings also became a refuge for many. As businesses went under, their former premises became makeshift apartments. Families found corners, rooms, and spaces where they could escape the wind and rain and feel the small security of having a place. As these families congregated together, meals were sometimes shared and prepared together, adding a sense of community and camaraderie amid the hardship. Reflect on this history so as preppers we can be ready for societal collapse. As the harsh realities of the Great Depression began to take root, sandwiches became a staple at nearly every meal. These meals always started with a couple of slices of bread, but the fillings varied significantly. Meat was often missing from the equation, but numerous substitutes found their way between the slices. For instance, relish sandwiches were a simple yet satisfying combination of chopped pickles. Another option was the butter and sugar sandwich, a sweet makeshift meal that often served as the day's only breakfast. When the backyard garden was ripe with produce, tomato and onion sandwiches became a popular favorite, with nothing but salt for garnish. Peanut butter sandwiches also burst onto the culinary scene as a way to reintroduce some protein into meals. Then, in a surprising twist, someone had the audacious idea to top the peanut butter with jelly, and it's safe to say we've never looked back since. Ketchup sandwiches, however unusual they may seem, were a regular part of many meals during the Great Depression. While ketchup was mostly considered a weak tomato sauce, it became a favored sandwich filling, often serving as both the condiment and the main ingredient. Leftover sandwiches were a common sight, with any remaining food from previous meals finding its way onto sliced bread. Even nuts like walnuts and chestnuts were included in the mix to add a protein component. In a shocking and innovative pairing, mustard joined ketchup as another condiment for sandwiches. Who would have thought? Can we even imagine a hamburger or hot dog today without that combination? Lastly, the one-eyed Sam came into existence, a piece of bread with a hole in the middle, filled with an egg and fried, resulting in a delicious, simple meal. These resourceful combinations from the Great Depression era remind us of our innate capacity to adapt and improvise during challenging times. Let's learn from this as preppers. The scarcity of everyday ingredients like meat and milk did not dampen the spirit of those times. Instead, it fueled inventiveness in their kitchens. People developed a knack for utilizing all available resources and minimal ingredients to the fullest extent. They turned towards less expensive and often overlooked cuts of meat, like pig's feet and beef shank, transforming them into the staples of their meals. Instead of disposing of leftovers, they became the basis for the next meal. A common method was to reheat and reinvent the previous day's meal into something new and palatable. Amid this innovation, a dish that stands out is potato soup. This dish, often the lone item gracing the tables, originated from the Irish immigrants. Using their resourcefulness, they transformed the easily available potato into a nutritious meal. The recipe was simple. Boil and mash potatoes, add a dash of salt and pepper, and voila, you had a hearty soup. This soup didn't just satiate hunger but became a beacon of hope, a symbol of sustenance during challenging times. These are lessons we can learn as preppers. Now to some specific meals that came to be known as Depression-era dishes. During these times, people had to get creative with their meals, giving birth to some innovative yet nutritious recipes. One such recipe was the Hoover Stew, named after President Herbert Hoover, who was in office when the Great Depression hit. This dish was a mix of pasta, canned tomatoes, corn, beans, and hot dogs. Ingredients that were relatively inexpensive and readily available. The stew was hearty, nutritious, and could be stretched to feed a large family. Bean soup was another popular dish during this era. Beans were a great source of protein and could be stored for long periods. People would use any beans they had on hand and any leftover meat bones to create a soup that was both filling and nutritious. Another improvisation was the rag soup, made from wilted leafy greens found in the garden or foraged. These greens were cooked down to a rag-like consistency and seasoned with a bit of salt. Though simple, this dish provided much-needed vitamins and minerals. Lastly, the egg drop soup, an Asian tradition that found its way into American kitchens during the Great Depression. When meat was scarce, eggs provided an affordable source of protein. This soup was made by dropping whisked eggs into boiling chicken or vegetable broth, creating delicate, flavorful strands of cooked egg throughout the soup. These meals, born out of necessity, are a testament to the resourcefulness of people during the Great Depression. Despite the scarcity of resources, people found ways to nourish their families and maintain their spirit. As preppers, we need to continue to learn from this history to be ready for whatever is in front of us in the future. Now let's explore the ingenious cooking techniques that emerged during this time. When money was scarce and food was rationed, people had to get creative in the kitchen. A common practice was gleaning, which involved foraging for wild edible plants and fruits. This not only supplemented their diet, but also introduced a variety of flavors into their meals. Another technique was can stretching. This involved diluting canned soups with water or milk to feed more mouths. The soup might have been less flavorful, but it was a way to ensure everyone had something warm in their bellies. People also learned to use every part of the food they had. Waste was not an option. Bones from meat were used to make broths and soups, while vegetable scraps were composted to fertilize home gardens. And speaking of gardens, victory gardens became popular during this time. These were small home gardens where families grew their own fruits and vegetables, reducing their reliance on grocery stores and stretching their food budgets. Please note that I have a separate video on the channel titled 9 Survival Crops Preppers Should Grow to Be Ready for the Apocalypse. If you want to check that video out next, I'll leave a link to that video below. Then preservation techniques like canning, pickling, and drying became essential skills. These methods allowed families to store surplus produce from their gardens and enjoy them during the colder months or times of scarcity. These innovative cooking techniques were not just about survival. They were about making the most of what they had. Keep learning from our ancestors' preppers. During the Great Depression, milk was a luxury for many, and when it finally made it into the icebox, it wasn't for simply drinking. Instead, it was used as a key ingredient in a variety of dishes, transforming simple, everyday items into meals. It was an embodiment of the era's resourcefulness and resilience. Cornbread in milk was one of the most popular recipes. Cornbread, when soaked in milk, turned into a filling meal that was both nutritious and comforting. Popcorn in milk with a sprinkle of sugar was the closest many families came to having breakfast cereal. The popcorn provided the crunch, the milk added creaminess, and the sugar lent a hint of sweetness. Noodles in hot milk was another favorite at lunch and dinner. The milk gave the noodles a rich, hearty flavor and added much-needed calories to the meal. Rice in milk was another regular dish eaten at all times of day. The rice would expand in the milk, creating a filling meal that could be stretched to feed an entire family. These milk-based dishes remind us that even in the face of adversity, creativity and resourcefulness can shine through. During the Great Depression, the mindset of discarding a piece of clothing for a small rip, stain, or lost button was unheard of. Instead, clothes were meticulously maintained, re-sewn, even patched together, or torn apart for the fabric and sewn back together to make something new. Shoes and boots were repaired with rubber tires, cardboard, or even stuffed with cotton to provide padding or insulation. Knitting found a revitalized interest, and quilting moved beyond the domain of grandmas to everyone as any scrap of fabric became a source for a new patchwork quilt. Sewing became a new skill that most everyone mastered as daily clothes maintenance became as common as washing and drying. Layers of clothing was the new fashion statement, not only to increase insulation, but it made any travel or relocation somewhat easier. In the face of the Great Depression, even sanitation became a challenge. Basic products like soap, shampoo, toothpaste, and common house cleaning supplies were either unavailable or desperately purchased, often choosing between hunger and hygiene. But the human spirit proved indomitable, improvising and innovating to meet the challenges head-on. Vinegar, a common household item, emerged as the new cleaning solution. Its antiseptic properties were used to treat cuts, scrapes, and burns. Some even used it as a shampoo substitute, especially when combined with soap shavings. Many families began making their own vinegar from fruits and grains, another testament to their resourcefulness. Baking soda, too, became a sanitary agent of choice. It was used for brushing teeth, general cleaning, first aid for stings and burns, and surprisingly, even for putting out grease fires. The need to maintain cleanliness also brought forth soap recipes from pioneer traditions. Soap, made from fat and ashes, was not just for personal use. It became a product that could be sold in street markets, providing a source of income for some families. Cleaning tools were also improvised. Brooms and mops were created from straw and other shrubbery for broom heads, while rags were tied together to form mops. In the face of adversity, the people of the Great Depression era turned to their creativity, resilience, and resourcefulness. And we can learn from this preppers. Let's also not overlook the ingenuity applied in the field of medicine. With doctors and hospitals becoming a luxury many could not afford, everyday medical care often resorted to old-world herbal remedies and treatments. In this period of adversity, anyone with any degree of medical knowledge emerged as a valuable member of communities, from neighborhoods to makeshift shantytowns. Dental care, too, became an exercise in resourcefulness. Natural materials and plants were utilized to improvise remedies for oral health issues. Herbs served a multitude of purposes, acting as poultices, infusions, and teas to combat a range of illnesses and afflictions. The humble willow tree, known for its medicinal properties, became a beacon of hope for those suffering from pain. Its bark, when brewed into an infusion, served as a natural aspirin, providing much-needed pain relief. Physical injuries were common, and in the absence of modern medical supplies, first aid treatments were often improvised. Boards were used as splints, while bandages were crafted from available plants or torn pieces of clothing. Also back then, fishing became a common practice in any place where fish or shellfish could be found. Hunting, using anything from slingshots to improvised weapons, also became a necessity. Animals such as rabbits, squirrels, and even rodents like rats and mice often ended up in the cooking pot. Foraging was not just a hobby, but a survival tactic. Edible weeds in cities like dandelions and plantains found their way from the sidewalk cracks to the dinner table. Canning, drying, and other food preservation techniques were automatic. Many things from the garden also found their way to the street markets for sale, proving once again the resilience and resourcefulness of the human spirit. As we near the end of our discussion of the Great Depression era, let's not forget the most crucial survival tool of all time, the indomitable human spirit and the strength of community. It was not just individual resourcefulness that saw people through this harsh time, but the power of unity, shared resources, and mutual aid. Neighbors traded services and goods, families shared meals, and communities came together to build shelters, grow food, and provide emotional support. This collective resilience was a beacon of hope amidst the despair, a testament to human solidarity. Barter systems thrived, with people exchanging skills, labor, and homemade goods for food and essentials. The concept of waste not, want not was taken to heart and practiced religiously. In the face of adversity, people found innovative ways to not just survive but to thrive. As we wrap up today's video, if you have any questions or if there are any topics that you would like discussed in the future, let us know in the comment section below. We love to get video ideas from the community, and let us know what you think of today's video as well. We always appreciate input. Be sure to like today's video and subscribe to the channel to learn more about prepping and share the video with others that may have a passion for prepping or are curious about prepping in general. And lastly, based on YouTube's algorithm and your viewing history, YouTube is recommending this next video in the top left-hand area of your screen for you to check out next. Enjoy.